Welcome to Trail Talks, the International Trail Running Association's podcast. I am your host, Stephanie Case, and today I have the pleasure of chatting with Mirna Valerio, or as she's otherwise known, the Mirnavator. For those of you who don't know her, dive in. She is a force of nature. Mirna is a Black woman who describes herself on this podcast as plus size or fat, a term that I personally struggled with a bit. And she does incredible work to increase representation on the trails. We talked about her experience in the recent Lululemon Further event, what's coming up next, the best trip of her life in the Alps last September, but we also focused quite a bit on some of the heavier topics, her work on diversity, equity, inclusion, and how it feels to be a Black woman on the trails. I really appreciated how open she was about her experiences. You know, Mirna is someone who comes across as bubbly and joyful, but there's no doubt that the work that she does and the role that she plays takes a lot of mental energy to deal with, which we talked about. And it's a good reminder to us all that everyone's experience on the trails is vastly different, and it requires constant work to make it an inclusive space for all. I hope you enjoy this chat as much as I did, and I look forward to any of your feedback.
Welcome, Mirna, to the podcast. So excited to chat with you today. We've already been giggling away. I've already messed up in our pre-chat, so I'm sure that'll happen again as we're chatting along. But thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, I want to start off, I find it interesting. I do these, just for our listeners to know, I do these pre-podcast surveys to get a little bit of information about our guests before we jump on. And when I asked you to describe yourself, I thought it was interesting because you described yourself as a parent first, multi-sport athlete second, and writer third. And many of us listening today, myself included, the first thing I think of you when I think of you is I think of you as a trail runner, as an ultra runner, as a professional in the diversity, equity, inclusion space. And I thought it was so interesting how the things that you mentioned first, and was that intentional, subconscious? Does that represent how you see yourself, or is it impossible to choose?
That's so funny. Because I was probably filling out that survey in the middle of the night after a long day, and you know, and then secondly, it was not intentional, but I those were probably the things that were top of mind at that point in time a few days ago, and then there was this just recently there was, after this big race that I did, which I'm sure we'll talk about with Lululemon, there was a piece that came out in one of the magazines. Or someone's Substack actually that complained about how no one knew I was a mom.
It was Sarah Lavender Smith, and
yes.
We will talk about it.
I'm like, everybody knows I'm a parent. You know, just because I don't talk about it every day, it doesn't mean that that's not part of who I am. Obviously, a very large part of who I am and how I operate in the world and how I walk through the world. And so I just thought that was really funny. But yes, like there's so many other things. And like depending on what mood I'm in, because people ask me, oh, what do you do? And I'm like, do you have an hour? For me to explain all of the different things that I do and that I'm engaged in. So it was probably unintentional, but like subconsciously affected somehow.
Absolutely. And I think it's probably quite healthy that you have all of these other things going on. And quite impressive as a multi-sport athlete. You know, from my own perspective, I can't do other sports. I'm very realistic about this. I can just put one foot in front of the other. Right. And I know that, you know, you've started in other sports, you've picked up other sports along the way. So I thought it was pretty interesting to see that come out. And what I also liked is the last descriptor you used was that you were not an influencer, but you were a possibility model. And I love that reframing, because the word influencer to me has this kind of one-way connotation, this action of trying to push other people in a certain direction. And it sounds more like when you describe yourself as a possibility model, you're opening up a door for other people to find new things for themselves. Is that right?
Yes, and that's absolutely how I imagine myself, how I perceive myself. Now, that is not a phrase that I created on my own. It was a newer friend who is actually, I think she's like the director of religious services or something like that at Princeton. And she is awesome. And so as we were having breakfast one day, she's like, I don't use the term influencer. I see you as a possibility model. And I'm like, say more.
I love it.
You create possibilities for people. You show people what's possible in their bodies. You put things on people's radars that they never imagined seeing or experiencing or having. And I love that. I love that idea because I think that's who I am as an educator. I don't teach in a classroom anymore, but this is a larger platform that I have to educate people with. And so I take that job and that honorific very seriously, because that's exactly what I want to be doing. And sometimes there's a product involved, but there are always products that amplify one's life, and help you to live this lifestyle that I get to live, or to help you aspire to that. So I love that. I love being a possibility model, and I also hate the term influencer because not because I hate influencers, it's because of the very, very negative connotation that word has now. It's people see influencers as vapid, as clamoring for clout and followers and brand partnerships, and I'm very lucky in that I haven't had to reach out to any brands. They all reach out to me, and so like that puts a different spin on the work that I do.
I want to dive into the DEI work that you do, but first I actually want to talk about the sponsors and brands because I'm really quite curious how you navigate that space, because I think and correct me if I'm wrong, but after the Black Lives Matter movement really exploded, there was this huge interest in having greater representation and visibility of underrepresented communities and marginalized communities. But of course, that comes with this inherent risk about exploitation, about tokenism. Do you have conditions on who you choose to represent, who you work with? How do you know if companies are genuinely engaging with you?
That's on a case-by-case basis, and I am very fortunate in that all of the brands I work with, I've been working with them since before the resurgence of the Black Lives movement and Black Lives Matter movement, and so they've stayed with me and have
That's
been
awesome.
Well, they've been like influential in my life, and our partnerships are symbiotic relationships. I have something to give them, and they have something to give me, which I then pay it forward as much as I can to the various communities that I'm part of. So there was a lot of, I think, exploitation of other people who might call themselves influencers or possibility models, or people doing in the same space that I'm in. There was a lot of that. I will say that I had a very good 2 years financially, because I'm also a DEI practitioner, as you mentioned earlier. And so a lot of companies and brands were asking me to do some workshops, to train them. And I got to work with Burton Snowboard, Stern Tough Vermont, Merrill, and at Merrill I was already connected with as one of their ambassadors, and a host of other outdoor brands. There was a project of Nike that reached out. And so I got to engage with these brands in, I think, really powerful and meaningful ways, because I had already done tons and tons and tons of DEI work professionally. So, and it was just an extension of what I had done as a teacher, when I was a teacher for 18 years. So for me, I didn't feel tokenized or exploited in any way, because I had already had longstanding partnerships with the brands that I was associated with. And it really was an honor for me when other brands that I didn't have any connection to reached out because they had heard about my work in some way. And so, but yeah, there was a lot of the, and I'm not going to name and shame, but I could.
Go on.
Other brands that suddenly had a whole crew of people of color on their ambassador teams, and many of those teams don't exist anymore. And, because it's not trendy.
Yep.
And, they don't see that work and continuing that work as a vital part of their bottom lines, which we all know that it is if you want to be a sustainable brand these days. If you want to, if you want to keep making money, you've got to have a large demographic base for your consumer base. So anyway, I can go on for 3 hours, but I won't.
I think it's right and appropriate that we should have this level of scrutiny on brands, but it's also becoming so difficult. I feel like there's a lot more scrutiny on the athletes themselves. I mean, we've just had this controversy over the past week or two. I don't know if you've been following around Spring Energy gels and this high carb awesome sauce gel, which turns out to have been overstating the amount of carbs and calories in the product. And some athletes who were involved in the brand, the Roches, who we had on the podcast recently, were really criticized by some and held to account in some ways for the failure of the products. And so, now it's not just an easy matter of a company reaching out or you reaching out to a company and you have a relationship, and as we say in Canada, Bob's your uncle. That whole situation is really interesting. Before I came out west for this particular trip that I'm on, I was just looking at all the awesome sauce packets that I have. And I'm like, I should have just gotten some applesauce. Someone referred to it as a $7 packet of applesauce, and I think it was Scott Coomer. I'm neither here nor there as far as the product is concerned, but it is interesting to watch how just kind of lay people, and not to say that David and Megan are like normal people, because they are not, but just people who are not executives at brands, or their marketing folks. We are intimately now connected with those brands. Like, even though we are not executives, we are clearly connected with the marketing efforts. And so yes, there is some accountability, but no one can expect us to know everything all the time. And absolutely,
I'm not a scientist. So I wouldn't know the difference. I don't have, ways to quantify the carbohydrates and the calories in anything that I take in, other than reading the information that is printed on the packet for the consumer. And so I have no way of knowing that if that's erroneous or not. So so it is a sort of sticky situation to be in, but I think we also have to give some grace to people who, might have been duped.
I agree.
That's all I'll say about that.
Yeah, we'll stay away from the nitty-gritties on that one. So on the DEI work, so diversity, equity, inclusion work, you represent diversity in a multitude of ways. As a woman, as a Black woman, as a Black woman who doesn't necessarily fit the stereotypical mold of what people think of when they think of. Okay.
I use plus size, so you can please say plus size. I refer to myself as fat, and other folks might cringe at that. But it's just a word, and I'm really, really trying to decrease the stigma around that word. So I use the word fat. I also use the word plus size.
I will call you however you want to be, however you want to be described. I would feel uncomfortable calling you fat. That doesn't. Okay. I don't like those words coming out of my mouth. But plus size. I mean, you tell me what to call you, and I will stick with that. But it just feels, I've been socialized. It feels wrong because of the negative connotation around that word, and it's not how I see you. That's not how the word that comes to my mind. But looking at all these various modes of representation, I want to start with the subject of race first. Let's dive in. And this notion, or it's not a notion, it's a fact that the outdoors have been and still are white spaces. And I think it's a hard thing for some people to grasp because, and I said this maybe 10 years ago, even though I consider myself a human rights lawyer, it was a stupid thing that I would say. When I said, oh, all you need are your shoes, the outdoors are open to everyone. And I think it relates to something that you've referred to on other podcasts where you talk about the different stages of anti-racism. And I'm interested in how this applies to the outdoors, because the first one, I think, if I'm getting this right, that you've highlighted is this notion of color blindness. And I think if we apply that to the outdoors, to the outdoor setting, that's one way of being colorblind, by not recognizing that the outdoors are not open and free to everyone, and that there are these barriers. So how do you help people understand who just genuinely don't see it? They don't get it.
Sure. We really need a couple of hours for this. I actually just came from the Mountains of Color Film Festival in Jackson, Wyoming. Right? Mm-hmm. Yes, and it was phenomenal. It was fantastic. It was such a beautiful experience for most of us involved, and it was a space that had been created for people of color, or as some refer to as the BIPOC community. That's not a term or an acronym that I like to use, because there's some erasure involved in that, but we don't have to talk about that right now. But and so I actually gave a DEI presentation at this film festival, and the question is, is the outdoors? Are outdoor spaces? I can't even speak now.
The teacher part of your brain is correcting yourself.
Grammatically, syntactically. Okay. Are the outdoors truly equitable? Or is the outdoors truly equitable? Are outdoor spaces truly equitable? And so yes, and I began the presentation like this. Everyone says nature is for everybody. The outdoors is for everybody. Everybody's welcome on the trails. When ideologically, that's true. That's what we want. Nature doesn't discriminate. Yeah, nature doesn't discriminate. But people do. And
society does.
Society does. And so we have to realize that everybody is bringing all of their identities onto the trail, on the slopes, on the water, and everything that's going on in the world. All of that impacts the way we exist in natural spaces. And so, so it's really tough for folks who have never had to think about their personal safety, their physiological safety, their emotional and mental safety while they're in so-called natural spaces, outdoor green spaces, blue spaces. When you've never had to worry about that, it is definitely, for lack of a better term, a blind spot for you. Yeah. And so this term color blindness, or this notion of, well, I don't see color. Well, if you don't see color, we'd all like to not have to see color, right? But unfortunately we do. And racialized folks, and I'm talking people who are mostly members of marginalized communities because of their races, the color of their skin impacts them every single day in every single space that they exist in. And so when you say, oh, I'm colorblind, or I don't see color, you are basically gaslighting people and negating their lived experiences, which are hyper-racialized all the time. Even as we were in Jackson, we're having this phenomenal time. And everyone's always on high alert, and I'm not going to speak for all people of color, but many of us, many of us are always on high alert, even though we might be having a great time. And we were at this particular festival and all the activities that were sort of corollaries to the event. We went on a hike. There was some paddleboarding. There was some bouldering and some other things. I think there were some people fly fishing too, which is might be my next sport. Even though I don't know anything about it, but I'm intrigued. There's always somebody that messes it up for us, even though we're having a great time. And so there's always something that mars the experience. And it is usually something that has to do with race. I won't go into detail about this particular incident, but there was an after party after we had a phenomenal day of seeing just the creative genius of all of these creators who are people of color in the adventure space, and we're on a high. We're listening to music, and I wasn't even going to be at this party because I don't like parties. I'm old, and so I'm talking to a guy who is a cyclist who is he does bike packing. I'm talking to this woman who's a skier, and we're having a great time, and some guy who was high off his rockers comes by and starts basically assaulting us, and there's this whole there are two tables of white people who are watching this happen, and we are being very firm with this guy. Stop, go away, get out. We rearranged our seats so that we were protecting one of the people that had been targeted, and they were just watching and letting it happen. And meanwhile, we had this. This is not a particular. This story doesn't have to necessarily do with the outdoors, but that does have to do with joy, and our joyous experience is being marred by people not seeing us, even though we are always hyper visible, and just letting bad stuff happen. And so that's just one incident. I was once on my own property. I was right at the edge of my own property in Vermont, and I had been shooting some stuff with Boston Globe. And the crew was, and also me, we're all people of color. And we had an amazing day running my trails that I had built, and talking about generational wealth and legacy, and how we're so behind, but we have an opportunity to create legacy, especially as it concerns coming back to natural spaces. And of course, as we are packing up and sort of celebrating, someone drives by, backs up, and asks us, what are we doing here? Are we guests at the B&B, the Airbnb here? Are we lost? Are we? And this person was very aggressive about this. And so there almost isn't a time when somebody doesn't say something just off kilter, or make an assumption about why I'm in a space, or why other people are in spaces, or making assumptions about our ability or experience with something. There really never is a time, unless I don't encounter people. But also, I am, as I'm on a trail, as I'm on a slope, I'm always sort of afraid for my personal safety. There's always a level, it's not always high, but it's always there. And so if you are saying I'm colorblind, I don't see color, you are negating all of those experiences. You are imagining that they don't happen just because you have not experienced those. So that was a very long way of saying that colorblindness is detrimental to the health and well-being of people of color.
Mirna, thanks for sharing those experiences, and I'm so sorry that they happened to you. It sounds exhausting, just as a listener to you. So to have to go through that, I think it's important for our listeners to understand just how much mental energy that it takes to, for you and other persons of color to be on edge, walking on eggshells, waiting for, as you say, that moment for your joy to be taken away, or having to think about how you're acting on the trail or in other spaces. And these comments that are made to you are these signals, questioning why you're there, questioning what you're doing. I mean, those are clear signs that someone is saying to you, this space is not for you, and you don't belong here. I mean, it's I think that's one, very clear example about how the outdoors are not the same for everyone. And that's where we have to recognize that these are racialized spaces. And there was one other thing that you mentioned as well, looking at the different ways, and again, going back to these different stages of anti-racism that you've talked about before, something I've seen just, on the gender equality side, not even looking at the intersectionality of everything. One of the arguments that has come up in the past, it's an old argument, when people talk about why there aren't more women on the trails, they say, well, it's because women aren't predispositioned to do these types of hard races. Maybe they're choosing not to be.
What?
Yes. Do you find? So this for me relates to the blame the victim part of it. Does that come into play at all when it comes to race and the outdoors in terms of underrepresentation? Or
I've definitely heard, oh, well, like, aren't you from Brooklyn? What are you doing here? Or like, don't you have a son? Like, what's your son doing? Like, when he was younger, he's 21 now and fully grown. Actual, he's more like a 70-year-old. But anyway, but who's watching your son? Who's like I'm not supposed to be out here.
None of their business.
I know. And they're definitely. And I remember actually when I was running in the early 2000s or like the late 1990s. It feels so old. That's another thing, people think that I just started running, but I've been running since 1989. Anyway, yeah, like, and people would say, like, what does your family think? Well, what is your, or when it was later, what does your husband think of all this? But I don't care what he thinks. I need to take care of myself. But in that, it's also it's really tough with, if you have a young child or if you have any sort of caregiving responsibilities, it's very difficult to balance that with, just number one, taking care of yourself. Number two, finding childcare, and so that could be a reason, especially if the women that we're talking about are parents or caretakers of their own parents or someone else, because that those duties typically fall on us unfairly and unjustly. That could be a reason why there are fewer women in this sport, even though it has been shown time and time and time again that our endurance improves as we age and as we go longer. So F all of that. It is this patriarchal system that we are still embedded in that is creating this inequity. Yeah, and so I was back to when I was running back in New York in the late 90s and early 2000s, and I did a race every weekend, and in the summertime, maybe twice a week during the week with New York roadrunners. And I remember them at some races having childcare. We do 5Ks or 10Ks, and they would have a little corral cordoned off where people could leave their kids. Not at every race, but like that seems like such a simple solution to getting more women, especially those who are parents, or just parents in general, whatever gender they might be, to participate in these events. And so, yeah, so there is a little of that. Like mostly the way people perceive me is as a Black woman, like what are you doing here? How did you get here? So that's been my experience. But again, I'm very happy that my son is 21 now and I can, do whatever the hell I want.
The Lululemon event, it got so much attention. I'm really interested in the follow-up to it, but let's cover what actually happened. This was an event with a group of 10 women.
Yes.
I think all different backgrounds, walks of life. You ran, I think, 23 miles, 38 kilometers a day for 6 days. That was 56 laps around a course, which to me, I want to hear how you maintained your sanity on that. Just before we get into the details, talk about what this was like. What was it like being there? What was the atmosphere? How did you deal with the laps?
First of all, I just want to say that I can't do any other race now without a private trailer, a private chef, a crew of 7, unlimited apparel and shoes, and a beautiful space in Palm Springs. Like, I can't. Like, if you don't have that, don't invite me to your race. I don't want to do it. Because literally that is what this event was. Obviously it was difficult. So for those of you who don't do kilometers, I did 142.6 miles, which was under my goal. It was 37 miles under my goal, actually. And, but I still PR'd. So it was still a PR opportunity for me. And, so Further was this huge event that was not supposed to be as huge as it ended up being. It was originally supposed to be like a 24-hour race, and I was like, oh, I got that in the bag, been there, done that, done. So, and so then it turned into this behemoth of like 10 women from, as you said, vastly different backgrounds, different training ages, differing experiences with ultra marathoning. And I actually was the oldest person on the team. Or I am the oldest person on the team.
Which is something that Sarah Lavender Smith had, which you referred to at the beginning. She had written this blog saying that, you were the oldest runner in the crowd. And she thought that you were the only parent. And she was, happy that you were there and representing, but she was kind of upset or criticizing the fact that there was no one over 50 in kind of the post-menopausal state. And the reason why is because this whole event was connected to research and science, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And I think, and I might be wrong, but I think it appears to me, though, that it was, I think, primarily women of childbearing age. I think. Because I still have a baby, because I still get my period, damn it. Not trying to do that. No. No, thank you. I'm free. Anyway, free falling. Anyway, so I think that was it. And I get that it was limited, but it was like, if you think about it, it was 10 people. It's limited in scope. I mean, it's an extremely small sample size for the data that they are getting. But I think it's absolutely a start.
Yes.
And hopefully, people keep asking me, would you do it again? I say no now, but like if they ask me to, obviously I would say yes. But no, I'm not doing it again. But hopefully this is the start of something bigger, and that more and more brands will take the hint that they also need to be doing this stuff too. Maybe not quite as flamboyantly as Lululemon did it, but it was like what a time, what an amazing thing I got to do. When I was asked to do it, I was like, absolutely. I said, yeah, well, absolutely, yeah, I'm there. Like I love running long distance, walking long distance, because that's what I do, and because I love seeing what my body can do. And it's not because of ego. I just want to see what my body can do, because lots of people think that I can't do a lot of stuff upon just looking at me. And so, and I'm not proving that for them. I'm proving that for myself. And then the side benefit is people seeing that and saying, wow, like, oh, okay, well, maybe I can do that too. Or maybe I can start, maybe I can do something different with my life. And it was over a year in the making. It was originally a small team of, I think it was like 5 of us, and I went to 7, then I went to 10, because they wanted a little bit more diversity. And I remember before we went to a full 10, I was the only plus size person on the team, and I'm like, oh, am I going to be the only plus size person on the team? No. They're like, no, we got you somebody. And they were very thoughtful about that. And that's when my girl Rico came on. She's from Hong Kong, and that comes with a whole other set of just stuff because of her being Asian, and them having very, very differing opinions about who is fat, who is not, who is plus size, who is not, and So that's a whole, I think they have more stigma than we do over in the States. And
it's crazy.
Anyway,
side note on that, when I lived in Thailand, and I needed new clothes, the lady that I was living with, she took me to the market, and she was just beside herself because I was an extra large and she couldn't find anything for me. I mean, size in Asia is a whole different ball of wax.
It's a whole different, oh yes. Entirely different monster. And anyway, so she's coming with that. And so, but we had this incredible opportunity, all of us, to be examined as scientific subjects, as research subjects. And that was like, when have you seen a fat woman included as a part of endurance research? Never. I'll just answer the question for you. Never. You've never seen it. Unless it was like something pathological, like they were trying to figure out, well, when is this person's body going to shut down, or when is this person going to ruin their joints or something like that. But but that's never been in any sort of like longitudinal research study anyway. So but yeah, so like to be included in that, like I think that's really important in the sense of really, really crucial message, not just to other athletic brands, but just to the world, right? Here we are, like there are people that are living on this earth in all different kinds of bodies. Let's see how they operate. It's women, especially people, people who identify as women, people who identify as female, and so it felt really good to be a part of that. We did VO2 max tests. We did body scans. We were paired with the head nutritionist of the Canadian Olympics, and the sports psychologist, and the person, one of the trainers who trains Olympians, and
wow.
the Canadian Sports Institute. Like so that and the person who was their lead performance guy, Trent Stellingworth, who was, who's famous in that area. Like he was overseeing all this. And so they took liters and liters of blood. Like I don't even think I have any blood left from
Did they take liters of blood like throughout the
I'm exaggerating. So maybe not liters, maybe like half liters.
Pinpricks.
Okay. So yeah, with the VO2 max, they take pinpricks every 3 minutes, and and then we had a couple of blood draws pre-event, and then during the event, I definitely got my blood drawn, I think every day. You could opt out of it. But I was like, please use me use me as a lab rat. And then also pre-event we did a final. It wasn't a VO2 max. It was a VO2 submax test. And but yeah, it was super cool to be part of that. And they did cognitive testing as well, and testing on our feet and the swelling and if the anatomy or any of the tissues changed while we were doing it. And yeah, and then all, and on top of that, we had all of the supports, like the comfort of having a trailer and having all the clothes that we needed. And if they didn't fit, they could immediately be tailored to fit.
Wow.
But all the clothes were made, all of the apparel was made based on our bodies. They had life-size mannequins, 3D models of our bodies. And so that's how they made, yeah, I know. So people are like, did you take it home? I'm like, no, that's a doppelganger thing. I don't want to pass by myself every time I get, no, that's weird. No, I don't want it. But anyway, so there was all of that going on. Meanwhile, we are running around a 2.56 mile loop in a desert. We couldn't leave the premises because it was a world record attempt, specifically I think for Camille and some of the sort of crazier runners, crazier in terms of all of the distance that they do, not for any other reason, but and Devin Yanko is on our team, Stephanie Flippin is on it, Leah Yingling, all those people who have done great things in the ultramarathoning world, so it was cool to be a part of that as a slow runner.
And that's what was so unique about it, because it was, each of you kind of figuring out what Further meant to you, whether it was 100 miles or 200 miles or Camille, I can't remember how many, but
560 Like something.
Which is painful. But this research element, I think why it's so important is that this sport, everything that has been designed to help athletes in the sport, the medical advice, the nutrition, the clothes, the coaching, it's designed around what little research we have on ultra runners to begin with, or trail runners, but it's designed around men. And we are not small men or different sized men, or we're not other versions of men. And so
white men, actually, it's all white men.
White men
too.
White men. So when is this research going to come out? Is it going to be public? What can we expect? What do you know?
Apparently, it takes years to aggregate data. So there's some coming out, I guess, within the next year. But then they're saying that like all the white papers and peer reviewed papers will need to I guess germinate for a couple of years. So. Yeah, for 10 people. But there was a lot of data.
Yeah, and hopefully it'll inspire more research in this area. We just we need it across the board. I've found this myself as I'm going through pregnancy. There's no advice for what you can do, what's safe, what's not safe. It goes across the board, and when you don't have the basis,
it's never been tested. It's never been researched.
Right.
Women, they're so hormonal, and so unpredictable.
Yeah.
So design research around the unpredictability. I mean, come on.
Yeah. And then there's a tendency for doctors to just revert to what is the most conservative advice, rather than let's figure out a way that we can support and help women do what they want to do at all stages, whether it's in pregnancy or going through menopause or perimenopausal states, all of that, because our bodies go through crazy periods. I mean, crazy times. I know that it's, affected you in your own running and how you feel, and it kind of feels like we're just swimming in the dark.
Yeah, because we are. We literally are swimming in the dark. But I love that there's so much information coming out now from people who are specializing. I'm thinking particularly of myself, in perimenopause studies and things, because we've a lot of times we've not had language for the things that we are experiencing in our bodies, and or we don't have information. So I'm so grateful that there are people like Dr. Jen Gunther, Dr. Vonda Wright, who is an orthopedist, but she focuses a lot on strength training in the middle years to counteract all of the stuff that's happening with our bodies as we go into menopause, as we travel that road to menopause. And so I'm so grateful for that. As far as pregnancy is concerned, I remember everyone saying, I should be shacked up in the house and not doing anything. But I actually did more exercise. The day before my son was born, I went on a 3-hour hike.
No way.
And I did. And he flew right out the next day.
Literally
flew right out. Because I couldn't stay still, and I had been very active throughout my pregnancy. I did a lot of swimming, a lot of walking. I stopped running because it just didn't feel comfortable for the body. But I made sure that I was still lifting some weights and stuff, and for me, and this is not the case for everyone, but it just made for an easier pregnancy and easier labor and delivery. So again, that is not everyone's experience. And so, even though I was technically, what did they say? I didn't have a risky pregnancy, but they were concerned about my weight. And I was like, I've always been this, I'm also an athlete. So even when, again, I didn't start running just now, I started running a long time ago, and I was, and have always been active since high school. And so I'm I've been doing 5Ks, I've been doing this, I'm fine. But anyway, so there's still so much information that we need, sort of credible science and research around it that is then disseminated to the greater public, and also to medical professionals who may seem not to know.
Excited.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what comes out of the Further event. And I've at least now got one data point from you that I should go hiking the day before I deliver. It sounds great to me.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, like, you won't know.
I'll figure it out. I'll just go hiking every day. But I can't.
There you go.
I can't let you, leave this conversation without talking about what you described as, the best kind of experience event that you had, which was leading, and I'm going to say that you were leading this event in the Alps last September because you were coming back to redo it this year in Chamonix with Run the Alps. Tell us about it. What was it like in Europe?
So that year, I guess last year, 2023, I had even gone to Patagonia. So and that was a spectacular, amazing, and I was like, oh my God, this is the best thing I've ever experienced. Oh my God. So all the wine, all the meat, and all the looking at all, Fitzroy and whatnot, and being in those spaces. Amazing, amazing, amazing. So, so I head out to Chamonix in September, and I'm like, oh, everyone here's an outdoor person. Yes, these are my people. I'm like, okay, everyone's carrying trekking poles. Everyone has a hydration pack or some sort of or backpack. I'm like, yeah, these are my people. And sort of the culture is centered on that, and I love that. And you can just walk everywhere and hike everywhere, and you can hike to some of the most. You can walk, or take a bus or the train to some of the most spectacular places. And so there's the space, right? Being a very big character in this. And the geography, and so I meet with them. I meet with Emily and Doug. Hillary Girardi was there.
Such a great crew at Run the Alps.
Sam, Sam and Mike. I think all of our guides were there, and so they're like, what can we do to make this an amazing experience for everyone? And the teacher in me is like, oh, we're gonna role play now. and I'm like, all of us on this trip are veteran runners. Most of us are veteran trail runners. There were 2 people, I think, or the one person that wasn't a trail runner. But now she is. But she had run, and she was an athlete. And I said, so that is the first thing that you need to know. Everybody is a veteran runner here. We all know what we're doing. We all have been on, on many. We're all very well traveled, et cetera, because. Sometimes when you go into a space, they make an assumption about you, and do you even know how to be on a mountain or whatever? But anyway, so there was that, and then there was also, I said, when we are, here's what doesn't work. When you are, if there's someone in the back, at the sweep, constantly checking in on somebody, or are you okay, or do you need to stop? Don't do that. This particular trip is for people who wanted to do things more slowly, or who need to do things more slowly, but can do the distance, can do the work. We just do it more slowly, and so I got up by Emily, and I got real close to her, I was touching her. I was like, don't do that. Not that anybody would, but I was like, don't do that. Don't be up on my butt and keep asking me if I'm okay, or I'm okay. We're all adults here. We'll let you know when we're not okay. But they were very kind and wonderful and very accommodating for the slow pace of the group. And I was the slowest one in the group. And I think I was coming off another trip or something like that. I'm tired all the time, right? And so I think that takes the onus off of other people as well, so that they're not worried about their own paces. And we just had a good time. There was never a moment where anyone felt pressured or about their pace, or they didn't feel bad about their pace. They knew it was difficult, but they were like, we're in this, look at the space we're in. Look at Mont Blanc right there. Oh my God. Look at what we get to do. And then we would run, all of the sort of downhills and the false flats and all of the rolling trails, and that's what it was about. So we, everybody, we would hike up and run down, and then none of us are Kilian Jornet, so we're not, we don't have his legs, and we're okay with that. and then only a few times did I encounter people who were like, "Oh, you're running! Wow, you're running! Whoa!" Those are mostly Americans. Anyway, so and Brits. So anyway, so yeah, and it was just the sort of curation, it wasn't overly curated. It was all of the relationships happened organically. They're going. Many of them are in a Dolomites now, doing another trip without me, and that's fine. That's fine. Okay. But I love that. I love that. And everyone had a good time, and I think there were aspects of people's lives that changed because of that trip. And there was one woman who was like, "I've always looked at the Run the Alps page, but there was never anything for me." And so this, she's like, when I saw this trip and I saw, like, because I follow Mirna, or this trip popped up on the website, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go because this trip looks like it's for me. And and so we had a phenomenal time. There was a variety of ages, of people of sort of, I got training ages as well. People had been like trail running for a short time, or people had been trail running for a long time. And we ate a lot of cheese, a lot of raclette.
You need that.
And wine, and they would go out, and I love part of the reason I do what I do is to formulate and sustain community. And so, like, the fact that these women are going on another trip without me, like, that makes me so happy that they're going to each other's events, they're planning things together. That's that is so cool, because adults need that. It's so hard to make friends. And then, like, just the ethos, I think, of the whole company of Run the Alps is, I share that ethos. And to be able to share that with people in my community, with plus size people, with people who need to run slower or want to run a little bit slower, or like just take things that are more, I'm not going to say leisurely, because we're not casual about what we do. But just a slower pace. And the fact that Doug was like, yeah, like, I want to do that. And we, the fact that he came to my house in November, and we had chili together, and talked about this, and like tried to plan more things, and to like do a little bit more education about like what my community needs, like that. No one has ever done that before.
What you're saying and what you're describing, I mean, it sounds like heaven, because it just seems like it's an environment where the pressure was taken off, because these group activities, these group events can be so intimidating. Like you said, there's pressure to be a certain speed, to run a certain distance, to do a certain thing. And if you have for example, a point-to-point tour, or like a tour around Mont Blanc where you have to hit a certain distance every day, and there's a lot of pressure on that, and that's people are going to self-select out.
Yep. Oh yeah. And with the opportunity to do something like this, like, it was just, I honestly think it's a boon to the trail running scene in general, because and I think that people, and I think like race directors and event directors will see that it is worth it, like, just bottom line. In case of the bottom line, and having things be profitable for races and other event organizations, like the more you diversify, the more you include people of differing paces, the more you really thoughtfully try to include more people of differing races and ethnicities in the event. And when I say thoughtfully, I mean you've got to prepare for the intersections of varying identities, of this notion that people saying stuff, or like to people who they are surprised that are there, in that particular space. Like, you've got to be ready for that. And I think with Run the Alps, we did, as a group, we did a really good job of doing that, of including people, and there not being any stigma about pace, there not being any, no one asked any like stupid off-kilter questions or said anything stupid or off-kilter, and yeah, I mean, it was such a phenomenal experience. It was like, as I said, it was the best trip of my life.
I can't wait to welcome you back to Chamonix this September. I'm going to invite myself over to the house. I'm already in contact with Doug, so we'll see you there, and I'll have a big fat belly by then. Now, to wrap up the discussion, I think I could keep you here for hours, but you are a busy woman, and you have things you need to literally run to. But I've got some, I call them quick fire questions that I'm just going to throw at you. Now, we haven't talked about it, but you are a phenomenal singer, and you gave us a little hint of it earlier in the podcast, which was nice. Do you sing when you're out on the trails? And
I do. And
if you do,
oh yes,
yeah. If you do you have a go-to song when you're in a lull? Yeah.
I don't have a particular go-to song, but I will tell you that during Further, I listened to music for about 30 seconds. The third day in, and then the rest of the time, because I just couldn't get my Garmin to work, and also like I didn't want to have anything in my ears, so I listened. I sang the entire way, or I would entertain myself with Act 3 of La Boheme. I sang it many times, the entire thing, all the parts.
Wow!
And so so I sang a lot. I do sing a lot. A lot of the times I'm also just quiet, and especially when I'm out on a trail, just kind of listening to things and taking in the sonic experience of just being outside.
Okay, you have a coach. Have you ever lied to your coach? And if so, what was it about?
I can't lie to him.
Listen.
He seems to know where I am everywhere I go. No, I can't lie to him. You know, I remember once the first year I was working with him, he called me. I'm on a couch and like literally eating a burrito. And he's like, Mirna, what are you doing? He's like, Mirna. I'm like, I looked at I was like, why is he calling me? He's like, Mirna, what are you doing? I'm like, eating a burrito on the couch. And this is before we were on Training Peaks, or before we had like a formal way of like doing my my workouts. And I'm like, he's like, did you do your run today? I'm like, yes. Okay, I did it. Okay. And then I think he was looking at my Garmin Connect anyway, so he's very familiar with what I do for work, and that I have my hands in a lot of different things. And so let's just modify a workout, or say, well, you know, this wasn't the best training period because, you know, you were here, you were there, or whatever, you were working on your weightlifting. But like, you know, we do what we can with what we have. So that's kind of what our relationship is like. So,
all right, this is the second to last question. What challenge scares you the most to think about?
I don't know if it's running. No, and I don't know if it scares me, but I want to run for as long as possible, and I want to be moving, and I want to be able to like continue doing the things that I do now, but like not, you know, obviously it won't always be in the same way or with the same kind of intensity, but I'm really hoping that nothing happens to hinder that. I want to keep moving as long as I'm alive. And so I'm really hoping, that nothing happens that will make that not happen for me.
And then the last question, what is next for you? What is up next, other than coming to visit us in Cham?
What is next? Gosh, wait, what? This is June. I will very likely make an appearance at Broken Arrow Sky Race, which I did not realize was next week.
Fabulous.
And then, you know, like I'm just trying to get my body back together after Further and not do super huge things, because my hip is still pretty sore. I have an MRI coming up actually, and like dealing with some sciatica and stuff, and I'm trying to lay low and be human and rest, and you know, before the next projects that I want to do. Like I just decided after being at this film festival that I want to make a ski film.
Yes.
I want to make a ski film. Yes. So that I think.
This would be incredible.
Because I was wondering, I was like, I want to do, like, I have access to all of these amazing filmmakers in the outdoor space, and I want to do something in like winter sports as I want to make a film about doing things in winter, like in the winter as a plus size Black person. And so I think that's what I want to do. So I'm putting it out there, folks. If you want to help me make a ski film, a little short doc about the joy of skiing and the body that I have, I'm there. Let's do it.
I have a feeling that there'll be quite a few takers on that one. But Mirna, thank you for taking the time. Thank you for sharing your experiences, your thoughts with us. It's such a joy to speak with you, and I can't wait for more in person with croissants and pastries and all sorts of things.
And raclette. Yes. We cannot forget the raclette. Huh?
And raclette. Fondue. Then we'll have a fight over which is better, Swiss or French. It's a whole cultural war.
On va voir.
Until next time.